The TSR, I just need a show of hands. Who knows what the TSR is? Can I see a show of hands? Actually, better question. Who doesn't know what the TSR is? Interesting, okay. They talked about it a little bit today. AACCP talked about it. The TSR is a rule promulgated by the Federal Trade Commission, and it's very similar to the CROA with prepayment, but it says you have to do your service, wait 6 months, and then get paid. People have been, yeah, I hear snickers. It is, unfortunately, it's not a joke though. That's actually what it says. So this is a problem. To be quite honest with you, I don't know a more catastrophic thing to happen to the credit repair industry than this. I can't even think of it. Maybe the CROA originally. But as far as this goes, it's definitely an issue that we need to talk about. I will assure you that this presentation is not going to be a presentation of complaints or whining and complaining. This is going to be a presentation of solutions, and we're going to discuss the telemarketing sales rule straight on. Something stranger than the rule itself is how little anyone is talking about it, so that is going to be our goal today. All right, let's move on. Okay, so of the people that are talking about the TSR, you'll see some chatter online, you'll see some YouTube videos maybe, and some people talking in the comment areas. That's about it. Actually, that's not fair. There are some people doing things. There are some people filing lawsuits like Naxo. There are some people defending lawsuits like Lexington. So they are certainly engaged in this. But for the most part, the people that are engaged online, it's very hit and miss. And ultimately, people are just kind of talking about loopholes here and there. And those discussions get really heated and people kind of get frustrated at each other. This discussion could probably, I can guarantee you there's someone in this room that's going to disagree with some of the stuff we're going to talk about. Ultimately, disagreement is great. If someone came up to me and said, hey, I don't agree with this, what? I'm going to take that, write it down, I'm going to go send it off to 3 different attorneys, I'm going to find out the answer, and I'm going to bring it back to you and back to the community. So, if we disagree with anything, that is awesome. Let's do it for the purpose of helping each other. So, by all means, at the end, if you have something you disagree about, or you want to talk about something further, please bring it to our attention. Okay, one quick disclosure before we move on. I'm not an attorney. I'm not giving legal advice, I'm not giving financial advice. And I don't like those stock things. Just listen to what I'm saying, because I did a lot of research on this. Don't rely on what I'm saying, but take it to your attorney or your trusted expert and say, hey, is this guy at CreditCon crazy? Is this real? You know, go take this stuff and take it to your experts and find out if it applies to you and how. Okay, you guys probably deserve a little bit of background on who I am and why I'm up here talking about this. I'll take you back to my military service, kind of relevant. I was actually in a special field called counterintelligence. I was in the Army counterintelligence. And my first kind of experience with credit was when I got deployed to Iraq. As you can imagine, it's kind of difficult to pay attention to your finances when you're in a combatant theater. But when I came home, I noticed that there was things on my credit report. And I had a hard time figuring it out. I started looking through the laws. Thinking I'd do it myself. It's a pain in the butt. I ended up hiring a company. That company ripped me off. I ended up hiring a different company. So I had experience with bad credit. I had experience with bad credit repair companies, and then I had experience with good credit repair companies. So that's where I gained an interest in credit repair, and then I started a credit repair company myself. I've run that credit repair company for about 11 years. The entire time, probably because of my counterintelligence experience, I was very concerned with threats. So I was looking at what is the threat to my company. Well, clearly lawsuits, people suing you, complaints, but also regulatory compliance is a major threat because these fines are serious. They are not slap you on the wrist fines, they're massive fines if you get wrapped up in one of these lawsuits. So I was very concerned with compliance from the beginning, and every time I thought I had some kind of solution, it's like, okay, cool, we have this agreement correct, we have this disclosure correct. Every time I would have a success at some compliance, I would find something else. Fast forward to about 2016, 2017, when I discovered the TSR, I was like, is this real? Like, this can't be what it says. I literally threw my hands up. I said, we're done. You can't operate with this. It's not really possible. So at that point, I sincerely said, we're done. We're not performing credit repair services anymore. Took us 4 years to get out of it, but we finally did it. Our company, seven-figure company, is for sale. There's an agreement going on right now. There's a sale pending on our company. We're getting out of the industry because of this. Now, that sounds doom and gloom. Hang in there with me. I took my sights and I said, okay, fine. This is weird. We can't do it in our individual capacity. Is there something we can do to help the industry? Is there a way to allow other credit repair companies that fall under the CRO or TSR, can we help them in some way so that they can continue to operate? The outline, what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about CROA and TSR formation. How did this stuff even come about? And it's extremely important to understand how this stuff came about. We're going to talk about TSR and CROA enforcement. What actions has the government taken against people? Why? How to avoid it? And things like that. We're going to present a solution to you. We'll talk about a conclusion, and then we'll have some time. We're going to be a little short on time, but if we have some questions, we'll take some questions. Okay, so real quick, I'm going to narrow everything down and make it super simple. First of all, there's a ton of laws out there. We're going to crunch it all down into two. Well, it's a law and a rule. The Credit Repair Organizations Act, the law, and then the rule, the telemarketing sales rule. There's a lot of stuff under each of those. I'm going to crunch it down even further. All we are talking about is prepayment prohibitions, the ability to take money and when. Why? It's very easy to comply with everything else, right? It's very easy to not lie. It's very easy to refrain from telling your consumers to lie. It's very easy to give them the correct contracts and the right provisions and the right disclosures. All that stuff you can easily do. You don't have to, there's no tricks of the trade, you just do it. It's very simple. On the other hand, prepayment prohibitions kind of dive into your company, they dive into your revenue model, and they can actually alter and severely disrupt your business. But in the case of the TSR, obliterate it. So we're going to talk about that. Okay, so here we go. Bear with me. The next 4 slides are extremely important, and I'm going to do something to you. I'm going to brief 4 slides. Then I'm going to go back, and I'm going to ask for a volunteer to brief these slides to me, at least one of them, okay? And if no one volunteers, I know your names already because I met all you guys, so I'm going to call people out. All right, here we go. The CROA says, do work and then charge. Who's familiar with that concept? Right? Everyone should have their hands raised. Do work, then charge and receive. Super simple. The TSR. This is what the TSR says. This isn't a joke. I'm not messing with you. The TSR says, do work, wait 6 months, get a credit report with proof of what you did, and if you said you're going to do something, you got to have a credit report that says you did it, which there's another problem with that. Then, if you notice I scratched out get, then try to get paid. 6 months later. What if you do 6 months worth of work, then wait another 6 months and try to get paid? Are they going to even cooperate with you on the credit report? This is an interesting thing. So whoever's briefing this, remember, do work, wait 6 months, provide proof, then get paid. This is another extremely important part about the TSR, and I'm going to call on one of you to brief this back to me. The TSR covers outbound and inbound calls. Some of you in this room are going, no way. There's no way. It should only be outbound calls for the telemarketers that are engaging people, right? Not in the case in credit repair. This is how the TSR works. It says inbound and outbound calls apply, okay? Then it has an exception for general media advertisement. So like a newspaper, a brochure, even a website. If someone goes on that and then picks the number and calls you, ordinarily that would not apply, okay? But they carved out the credit repair industry and a couple others, and they said, unless you're doing credit repair. So in other words, it's inbound and outbound calls, unless it's in response to general media advertisement, unless you're in credit repair. It's yes, it's ridiculous. Okay, next. Who is familiar with substantial assistance? Anybody? No one? Okay, under the TSR, you don't even have to be a telemarketer. You don't even have to be involved in credit repair. If you are substantially assisting a telemarketer and they are violating something, you can also be held accountable. Is anyone familiar with the fact that Google stopped doing credit repair ads? Okay, I don't know this for a fact, but I believe it's because of this. And you notice that it happened around 2017, 18, 19. That's when TSR enforcement started picking up, and all of a sudden Google's like, No, thank you. I don't want any part of this. Can't mention revenue they lost. They could have been held liable, so they get an ad, and then it goes to a credit repair company. The credit repair company doesn't comply with the TSR, because who can? Google is now liable for that violation. So in my opinion, I think that's why they dropped the credit repair ads. It has happened with payment processing. It's like an Operation Choke Point type thing. You can talk to Robbie Birnbaum, who knows a lot about this. But they basically go after payment processors who are assisting credit repair companies. This is a good case on that. It's not a credit repair case, but it shows you how they utilize substantial assistance. They've gone after banks and literally gone after the banking relationships with the credit repair companies to try to get them shut down. You'll notice I have a question mark after CRMs and dispute software. In my opinion, I'm just making an argument. There's no cases on this that I found. But what would stop them from saying a CRM is not substantial assistance or dispute software is not substantial assistance? Dispute software is actually involved in the mechanism of the credit repair company, so I can't imagine that wouldn't be. The point of this slide is that everybody, to the extent they're involved somehow in substantially assisting a telemarketer, could be subject to violations under the TSR. I'm going to back up 4 slides. I need a volunteer to tell me how the CROA works. Anybody? It's super simple. Anybody? King's credit repair?
Before you process the payment, you have to hit send on your computer. That way you can get the first work.
That's it. Yeah, you got to do something and then you can charge for it. It's that simple. All right, this was a little bit more complicated. Not too complicated, just follow the slides. Can someone tell me how the TSR works as it relates to prepayment? Matt Leisher has a mic in his hand. Oh, she's got it right here.
You do work, you wait 6 months, you provide proof, and then you try.
That's right. That's exactly it. You nailed it. All right, these slides get progressively more difficult, but who wants to try the outbound, inbound calls? I think Corey Miller there in the back wants to do that. I don't know.
You got it, man.
Maybe John Alzheimer or someone.
Right here.
Oh, here we go, we got it.
You should...
Hold it close, hold it close.
Oh, hold it close. Okay. Everything should be monitored and recorded, whether it's inbound or outbound. That's loud for some reason. As far as the call goes, in regards to credit repair offering or requesting information about it.
Yeah, that's definitely in there. The main takeaway on this slide, in my opinion, is that it doesn't matter if you're making outbound calls or receiving inbound calls, you are subject to the TSR, period. There is no exception for the general media advertising for credit repair companies. All right, last one, substantial assistance. Does anyone want to try this? Someone said no. Oh, here we go, right here.
If you're aiding in doing any of that work, you're also potentially able to be held liable for any negative enforcement actions
Bingo.
against the company.
You got it, that's right. Basically, their position is substantially assisting a violation is a violation. That's their position. Okay, so does anyone think that this is crazy? Like, yeah, okay. Well, Corey Miller thinks it's crazy. Okay, it is crazy. Let me tell you something. The FTC actually isn't crazy. When they passed the CROA, they weren't crazy, all right? They're not like weird people twisting their mustache, smoking pipes in the back room, looking to get you. That's not what it was, okay? These laws are outdated, for sure. It's overregulation, for sure. But this is all a reaction to crazy, okay? And what I'm going to do, I'm going to take you through a quick history. I'm not going to take you to history class in high school here, but I am going to take you back to 1987 and rip through time just to give you some context of what was going on. At the time, in the mid-'80s, early '80s, credit repair was literally synonymous with consumer harm. It was like, we deserve the black eye we have based on what was going on in the '80s. Not even close today. Look at this room. I mean, are you kidding me? I actually joke about to my staff. I said, imagine if you just like grabbed all the good players in the industry, just put them in a room. That's what this is. So it's a different world today. But in the '80s, this is what was going on. Look at all these headlines. I mean, it's just non-stop. When's the last time you've seen credit repair even make it into the news? You know, maybe an FTC, press release. But other than that, states, attorneys, generals were saying, hey, stay away from credit repair. It's nuts. There's a lot of consumer harm occurring. In fact, one of the cases, I think it was Credit Right, I don't know if that's the correct name, someone involved in Credit Right actually went to jail for 7 years for a credit repair scheme. Jail, not fine, jail. It was very, very bad what was going on in the 80s. As a result, they gave them the political capital, so to speak, to start passing the Credit Repair Organizations Act. This is, I'm gonna zip you through all this, but I need you to pay attention to two very important parts about the CROA, okay? First of all, it took them almost a decade to pass this law, which is, it wasn't good at the time, right? Because a lot of harm was happening, they couldn't get an actual law passed. There's two really interesting things that I need you to know about the CROA. Back then, the original text of the CROA provided for a bonding requirement, so it wasn't actually an outright fee ban. And by the way, I see people taking pictures of these slides. 100% I'll make these slides available to you guys. Okay, so the bonding requirement was what allowed you to take up front fees as long as you had a bond and there's other people involved. The FTC said, please take that out, okay? And they didn't take that out because they wanted to prohibit upfront fees. They took that out because they made a really good argument. I'm going to read it real quick. They said, even if spelled out in more detail, however, we are not persuaded that it being the bonding requirement should be included in federal legislation. The equitable distribution of bond funds may be difficult or impossible without the intervention of a third party. Okay, really good argument. Problem is, and by the way, keep that in your mind, without the intervention with a third party, okay? The problem is, Congress was like, okay, cool, that makes sense. And they got rid of it. Look what was left. Effectively an outright fee ban. So that's how we got to the outright fee ban. It wasn't originally intended that. Neither Congress intended an outright fee ban, nor the FTC was implying that. They were just saying, in order to handle that, it needs to be a third party, okay? But the net effect was that they took the bonding requirement out, and now we're stuck with a fee ban. Okay, and you should also know at the time, there was a ton of legislation going across the states. I think it was California that started the first one in 1984. Florida got theirs done in 1987. There was a lot of state legislation going on at the time and a lot of state enforcement going on at the time. Interestingly, the TSR was passed 1 year before the CROA. The CROA went into effect in 1996, but the Federal Trade Commission actually promulgated the rule in 1995. More interesting about this, they got the right to create the TSR, the first industry that they went after, credit repair. Literally the first industry they went after, credit repair. Again, like I speculated on the Google ads, I'm speculating on this. I actually think it's because Congress took too long to pass a law, so they're like, look, you're not going to do it, we will. That's what I think happened. Again, I don't know that. The TSR was effectively a sleeping giant because it passed in 1995, it was promulgated in 1995, and they never enforced it for 22 years. Why? I really don't know. I suspect because there was an emergence of compliance and states were going after people. I suspect, I don't know. But it's certainly a question worth looking into. The TSR is not hypothetical. I've talked to a lot of people here. Some people are like, yeah, that thing's awful. Some people are like, yeah, whatever, it's not that big a deal. Look, these are cases where they're using the TSR right now. Prime Marketing was one of the first ones that I saw. They went after Lexington in 2017. They ended up settling that case, but there was a lot of instructive things that came out of that case. 2019, they went after Lexington again. That's the current pending case that they're after in Lexington. And by the way, I'm going to talk about that in a second because Lexington has really good lawyers. Top Trade Lines got put out of business. They had a $9-point-something million fine. Like, again, these aren't slaps on the wrists. Boost by Score got put out of business. They had a $6.3 million fine. Commonwealth Equity Group, they are currently being sued. They're fighting. They're fighting very, very hard, and I'm really impressed with some of the arguments they're making. In addition to actual lawsuits that are visible with press releases and people talking about them, you go into Pacer and get access, there are things called CIDs. Who knows what a CID is? Anybody? Oh, this is awesome. CID is Civil Investigative Demand. The FTC or the CFPB can literally come to your door and be like, give me your stuff. Let me look through all your files. I'm not joking. They can literally say, let me just see if you're doing anything wrong. And that you guys don't see. You don't see these things unless you're in touch with some kind of Robbie Birnbaum or some kind of lawyer that's involved in the case. So there's a lot of stuff going on that you may or may not see. The cases you can certainly see, CIDs you cannot see. Robbie Birnbaum on Monday, I literally went back and edited my slide. He said the Biden administration has re-energized the CFPB and they're looking for cases. So this is not some kind of thing where we can stick our head in the sand. It is something that we really need to engage in and look at. I see some of the faces. I assure you I have some good news. Okay, this is not doom and gloom. All right. So it might be instructive to go back and look at how the industry reacted when the CROA came into effect, because essentially the TSR effectively just went into effect. They started enforcing it just now. So it was never an issue before now. So it might be good to see how, as an industry, we reacted and how we might react in the future to the TSR. Okay, as far as the CROA is concerned, at the time there was two camps. There was like the really, really bad guys, and then the guys that were like us, like doing the good things, trying to help consumers. The really bad guys were like, I got another thing to worry about, I don't like this. The really good guys were like, the heck, I've been helping all these consumers, and now I have them shackled with these crazy regulations and it's hurt my business. Okay, so everyone at the time was frustrated. So the first thing they do is they try to get around it with loopholes, okay? So we're gonna go through a history of the loopholes. I'll go real quick, but I want to press upon you that when faced with regulation, the instant reaction is to go to loopholes. I think it's a horrible idea. I think we should go to compliance. And I'm gonna show you a history of loophole failures. Okay, the first thing that everyone's gonna do is, that didn't apply to me, right? Obviously, if the CROA doesn't apply to you, you can't get fined underneath it. This kind of backfired because all these different kind of companies fell squarely within the definition of the CROA, and it actually expanded the definition of what a credit repair organization is. It applied to car dealers, banks, it applied to credit score providers. I mean, it's just all over the board. And it really actually expanded the definition. So litigation kind of backfired on that one. Lawyers are exempt. There's actually absolutely no exemption in the CROA for lawyers, period. There's been a bunch of cases about that. It's pretty self-explanatory. If you're performing credit repair services and you're making representations of credit repair, you're a credit repair company, period. Okay. It's not upfront fees, it's escrow. Remember this slide, because I'm telling you that escrow failed, but I'm also going to talk about escrow in a minute. You can't just call something escrow. You can't just be like, yeah, these are upfront fees, but I labeled them as escrow. That simply doesn't work. The principle in some of these cases was, if you're exercising control over the funds and you're just calling it escrow, that's not really escrow. You can't control the funds. And let's say I gave my money to Corey, and Corey's going to hold the funds, and I exercise control over Corey. Still not escrow. It has to be, do you remember, a disinterested third party. All right, I'm selling a product, not a repair, and I'm giving credit repair for free. That was pretty cool. I like that one. It's creative. The judges are also, obviously pretty smart people. They saw right through this, and they basically said, look, yeah, it might be a product, but you're bundling it together with credit repair, so it's not going to work. If you sold a product that was credit repair, the CROA does not apply. The CROA only applies to services, but when you bundle them together, that doesn't work. Again, why are we going through this? We're trying to show the failures of the way people try to like navigate and weave around the CROA, and it ultimately did not work. Okay, voluntary contributions, not fees. This kind of falls into the tax exempt stuff, but basically the court said, fine, give a voluntary contribution. Is it taxable? No. Okay, then it's not a voluntary contribution. You kind of have to be a nonprofit for that anyway. So speaking of, how about, I'm exempt as a nonprofit. The CROA explicitly exempts nonprofits. If you're a nonprofit organization, it does not apply to you. The problem is people were just calling themselves nonprofits. So they were saying, yeah, I got my tax exemption. See, here it is. The courts ultimately ruled you have to actually operate a credit repair, a nonprofit credit repair organization, and you have to be tax exempt. So unless you're doing both of those, you can't just call yourself a nonprofit and get an exemption. It's not going to happen. You can't fake it. Okay. There's multiple cases on that. I hope the future, not the past. This was an interesting one. I don't know if anyone remembers it, the retrospective versus prospective repair. I'm helping fix some stuff that happened in the past versus I'm just telling them how to be good in the future. Pretty good argument. It actually worked once and then failed. It all depends on the representations made. If you are a credit counselor, and if you say, my credit counseling services help improve credit, boom, you're subject to the CROA. If you don't make those representations and you're just sticking to your guns and you're really doing credit counseling and you're not doing retroactive repair, you might not be a CROA. A couple of cases there. Okay. This is the one where you guys are going to want to take me out back and maybe not be too happy with this one. All right, check it out. I charge for a previous month's work. Okay, everyone in the entire industry does this. And actually, Robbie Birnbaum made a reference to this earlier today, and I was kind of scared to go through this slide because I thought he would disagree, but I think he made a similar reference earlier today. Monday, sorry. Monthly is irrelevant. Monthly has nothing to do with whether or not your fees are legal. Whether your fees are legal depends on whether you perform the work first. The fact that you're doing it on a monthly basis is totally irrelevant. I'm not going to belabor this, but I want you guys to remember this slide, and I would encourage you to go to a lawyer and talk about it. There is still a question on monthly. It's a little ambiguous in the law. I'll do it real quick. Look, there's a section that talks about upfront fees, and it says you have to perform any service and then get paid, okay? It's pretty ambiguous. Can you break it up into fractional services? That's what it seems to indicate. But then there's another section that talks about in the contract section, it says describe all money and all fees that you're going to collect, and describe all services that you're going to perform. So the question really is, does the CROA want you to perform everything and then charge, or does the CROA want you to perform something and then charge? I don't know the answer to that question. If anybody's in the room that does, please email me. Let's talk about it. I asked Robbie Birnbaum, and he said that Repair My Credit Now, there was a settlement, and there was some guidance from the FTC. I was not able to track it down, but it's worth looking into. Okay, so we've seen how people tried to get around the CROA, and I'm going to present to you how I think people are going to try to get around the TSR, but it's actually already happening, okay? People are already trying to get around the TSR. So, this is, I believe this was the Lexington case. Yeah, this is the Lexington case. Okay, this is the most recent Lexington case. You got to give it to them. They are ballsy. Lexington got sued by the CFPB, and instead of responding to it, they moved to dismiss, and they were like, you're not even constitutional. Like, your entire agency, no, it's not even real. Like, no, get out. Really good argument. By the way, I'm characterizing that, but it is a really, really good argument, and I encourage you to go look at their motion to dismiss and read it. It is an excellent argument. I thought they were right. I thought they were going to win. Unfortunately, on that issue, I believe that they were ultimately determined to be constitutional. So, CFPB is not constitutional, did not prevail. The TSR was superseded by the CROA. This is a really good one, right? This is excellent because, remember, the CROA came out in 1996, the TSR came out in 1995. So the argument is law of land passed by Congress versus rule promulgated by Federal Trade Commission, it should supersede that. That actually occurs a lot in laws and rules. Usually they shove in the law a section that makes their intent clear. By the way, we're passing this and we don't want that anymore. Unfortunately, they didn't do that. In the case, there is a case on this, and it specifically said there was no clearly expressed congressional intention to supersede the TSR. So, unfortunately, the idea that CROA superseded the TSR is already settled. It has not. That's not to say that someone else might not prevail in the future. I'm just saying right now what we have to deal with. The TSR, there we go. The TSR and the CROA conflict. Another really, really good argument. These TSR arguments, in my opinion, are better than the CROA arguments. This one also failed. And it's failed multiple times, 3 times already since 2017. The courts basically said, if you're a credit repair organization, you have to comply with the CROA. If you're also a telemarketer, you have to comply with both, okay? So it basically said, if simultaneous compliance is possible, simultaneous compliance is necessary. So if you don't answer phones, you don't have to comply with the TSR. I'm hinting at something. If you don't answer the phones, you don't have to comply with the TSR. Does anyone believe me? Anyone?
No.
No? You don't believe me? He doesn't believe me. Here's a court case. This was the Lexington case, 2017, which I'm not going to opinion on something, but let me just read this. If a company is both a credit repair agency and a telemarketer, it is required to comply with both the CROA and the TSR. On the other hand, if a credit repair agency does not qualify as a telemarketer, then it need not comply with the TSR. Only the CROA is applicable. So that is huge, and you guys should remember this. Okay, so we're up until now. Now we're sitting in this room, chronologically we're now. There's been a lot of arguments online, people asking, experts, does this work, does that work, does this work? Here's a collection of those, and I just want to go through them real quick. I'm a not-for-profit. Not-for-profits, I believe, are exempt from the TSR as well as the CROA. So that one would probably work, again, if you are an actual not-for-profit. Face-to-face exemptions. Okay, this one it's a really good argument because there's actually a face-to-face exemption in the TSR. But it's pretty impractical to go fly across the country and meet all your clients face-to-face or have them fly into you. So some creative people thought that you could do mobile closers and where you could just send strangers over. I'm not going to belabor this, but there's a lot of guidance on this. Basically, the FTC has said you can't send strangers. The whole basis behind a face-to-face relationship is actually building a relationship. If you're sending strangers to meet your clients, you're not actually creating a relationship with them. The FTC specifically said that this does not work. Intrastate sales, calls only inside the state. You should know that the TSR only applies to interstate commerce. Okay, but what about intrastate, where all the calls are in? You're calling from Orlando to Cocoa Beach. That would probably actually work. It's just impractical because you don't have control over where your phone lines go. They could be bouncing over Georgia and back. So it'd probably work, but it's just so impractical that you probably want to stay away from that. I'm an attorney. Attorneys are not exempt under the TSR. The reason people think that is that attorneys typically have clients come in face-to-face and they're kind of already in compliance with the TSR, they already fit an exception to the TSR, but there is no exception for just being an attorney. I sell a product, not a service. Unlike the CROA, the TSR covers both products and services, so that does not work. Okay, this last one is really ridiculous. Someone who will rename nameless says, Robbie, I got it. What we're gonna do is we're gonna have an initial agreement. It's just gonna be like a hello, really micro agreement. We're just gonna get him in. Then I can talk to him on the phone, go over all the details, and then have another agreement. Okay. This is an example of the stuff we should probably stay away from. If you think you're tricking the Federal Trade Commission, you're not. It's not gonna happen. Why does this not work? Because there's an upsell provision in the TSR that says, sure, fine, you have a face-to-face transaction, you have an internet transaction, whatever, and then you get on the phone and then you sell something later, that is an upsell and that is now subject to the TSR. So tricky stuff like that, tricky little loopholes, very unlikely to work, Okay, so this is where we get into the good stuff. Therefore what? In my opinion, credit repair, the entire industry is in danger. I was just talking to one of the attorneys for the AACCP. He literally said the same thing to me. There's people that are very, very informed, a lot more informed than me, who share that opinion, okay? My opinion, loophole history, not encouraging at all. I don't think we've had a success on the TSR or even the CROA, to be honest with you, since its inception. So we need a solution and not a loophole. We need something that's actually going to help us comply with the TSR and help us move forward as an industry not subject to the TSR. Here is the solution. It's a pretty weak slide for how powerful this is, but this is it, okay? Internet only, third party escrow. Why? Internet only gets you around the TSR. Does not get you around the TSR. You are no longer subject to the TSR if you're doing internet only transactions, period. And there's people in this room that disagree with that too, and we're gonna go over that. Third party lives up to the spirit of both the CROA when they talked about the disinterested third parties, and escrow, you are not accepting upfront fees. So the fees that you accept are actually held by a third party and they're not yours. They're not yours until you earn them. So you're not violating kind of prepayment principles. Okay, who thinks that internet transactions are subject to the TSR? No one? That's good. There's a lot of people that do. A lot of people think that internet transactions are subject to the TSR. They absolutely are not, in my opinion. Number one, if you go look at the TSR, you can grab these slides, you go for yourself, do Control F, search internet. The internet is not found anywhere in the TSR. This makes sense. Why does this make sense? At the time that this passed, the internet really didn't exist. except for maybe DARPA had it. Okay, at the time that this exists, the abusive practices that they were going after were phone calls. This is a phone call centric regulation. There's a prevailing, I'm not going to go too deep into this, but there's an argument that's floating around that because the internet goes over phone lines, the internet is subject to the TSR. That's not the case at all. There was a case on this, and they basically shot that down. The judge is like, no, there's no cause of action under the TSR under that argument. Dish networks. Here's another source of confusion on this matter. VoIP is internet, voice over internet IP. The basis of what the FTC would say is they would say, if it's a phone call and it goes over the internet, it remains a phone call. But that doesn't mean that internet is subject to the TSR. It's not. So those are my opinions based on the stuff I just showed you. So what does the FTC say about this? That would be the most important thing, okay? There was 2 amendments to the TSR, there's periodic amendments, but 2 in particular, 2010 and 2015. And in both amendments, industry advocates were like, hey, can you update this to include the internet? Like non-stop, like children, please just get them, get them. Okay, the FTC responsibly said, no, we cannot regulate the internet. They're bound by the law that allowed them to create the TSR, and they're not allowed to do the internet. Here, let me show you what the FTC said in response to the people that were explicitly saying, let me regulate the internet. Please modify this and go get the internet bad guys. This amendment proceeding is limited in scope to the direct regulation of those telemarketers and sellers covered by the TSR. The Commission, therefore, cannot extend the prohibition, it's a fee prohibition, by the way, to internet-based transactions as suggested by some advocates. As far as I'm concerned, this is a settled matter. I know there's still talk out there. This is out of the words of the FTC. There's the source for it right there. You can look it up. I'm not crazy. It's a settled matter in my opinion. There's a bunch of arguments out there. I would encourage you to grab this slide and say, attorney, expert, what's going on? Is this real? Okay, and to really look into that. Bless you. Okay, so I want to press upon you one thing. What we're about to talk about with the solution, it's not a loophole. We believe we've found a solution for TSR issues if you do third-party, internet-only escrow. And we believe that this is not a loophole. We believe this is actual compliance, and that's a really important part to consider. How would this look? What in the heck are we talking about? It's just words. Can you show me? How would this actually work? There's CROA considerations, there's TSR considerations, and then there's everything that you do, okay? I'm suggesting that the industry modify the way it operates slightly. Number 1, all transactions need to occur online. Sorry, let me be more clear. All sales, like from the start of the sale, no phone call, to the actual end of the sale, no phone call. And some people in the room are like, how in the world would you possibly do that? I'll get to that in a second, but just keep in mind it's 100% necessary to get around to be not subject to TSR. From that point on, as soon as a contract is signed and a sale is done, you can begin performing service. The consumer needs to put money in escrow. And I did this slide for a reason. I went like this to get the money as far away from you as possible. Okay? That needs to go into a third-party escrow account. Once you perform service, that disinterested third party needs to verify what you have done. You need to say, hey, I did a month of work, or I got 13 collections off, or whatever it is. You show the disinterested third party, he goes, okay, cool, there you go, there's your money. Once the money is determined to have passed, it either goes as a refund to the consumer or goes as an earned income to the service provider. This, in my opinion, is the solution to the TSR. Does that solution exist? Shameless plug, yes it does. As most of you probably know, come up to our booth. We actually created a system that does exactly what we just described, okay? And this is how it works. It functions as an online chat, okay? The consumers come into the chat, the service providers come into the chat, third parties can come into the chat as well, by the way. If you have partners, real estate agents, they can throw the consumers in. An agreement is signed inside of the portal, okay? They literally sign it with their finger, everything's closed inside of the portal. Credzu will collect documents, will collect their credit reports, ID documents. Because doing this is extremely complicated on the banking side. Extremely complicated on the banking side. Every consumer comes with KYC, know your customer compliance. We actually verify them for fraud and all that kind of stuff. And it functions as an online chat with some pretty sophisticated communication. We blast text messages and push notifications and emails, and we provoke the client to move along through the process so that they sign an agreement with you. As soon as the agreement is signed, the client is yours. You can pick up the phone right then and there. That we're still looking into, but we believe you could talk right then and there. The sale is over. The only distinction I would draw is that if you sell them anything else thereafter, you're subject to the TSR. But at this point, the 6-month thing is gone. Okay, you have an online sale. The telemarketing sales rule does not apply, and you can move forward with your client. We handle the escrow when you perform service, or we take the money from the consumer and put it in escrow. Once you perform service, we release that money to you. I mentioned before that other people can be inside the system. It can be anybody. It can be even ancillary services that you want to provide, real estate agents, mortgage brokers. Everyone can collaborate inside of the chat. If you guys are curious to see what this would look like and how it would actually work, come over to our booth, talk to Corey. We'll give you a demo and show you how it actually works. One other thing, you remember I told you that Google AdWords stopped doing ads. We are intentionally outside of credit repair. We have to be, in order to be a fiduciary, we can't have an interest in the performance of credit repair services. So we actually asked for an exception to Google's ban on credit repair ads, and we got it. So this is a major advantage to the industry, because someone mentioned earlier that other companies like mortgage brokers and things like that were actually advertising for credit repair, and then those leads were going away from the industry. This, we can yank those leads back from those people that are just scraping off leads that ultimately should be with you. So we can actually alter that and push the leads back through the system to get back to you. So we intend to capitalize on that quite heavily. We intend to also provide leads. We're not really like a lead aggregator. We intend to draw people to this platform so that they can get connected with people like you who have their best interests at heart. Excellent. Okay. One interesting thing, we intend to work with everybody and collaborate with everybody, and here's why. We can't think of everything ourselves, and there's a lot of stuff that you guys come in contact with that we could potentially solve. I had a 60-second conversation with Robert from Naxo, and he was like, when we have these issues, those issues, and he said something and it stuck out to me. He was like, and all these companies, they don't really even know that they need to be licensed in these states and those states. And I thought to myself, like 10 seconds, I was like, wait, we could solve that in 2 seconds. We could literally just have, you're from Florida, we have a lead that comes in from Florida, it goes to the Florida company. You're in Georgia, not Georgia. If you're in a different state, we can, sorry. Matt's working on that, hopefully he gets that taken care of. Okay, but you're in any other state. And it's interesting, because we're going to be like a centralized platform and attract consumers to credit repair companies, if you're working in a particular state, we can give you only leads from that state, and you don't have to worry about licensing requirements in all the different states. I'm not briefing that right now. My point is, in a 60-second discussion, we thought of a really cool idea to help everyone else in the industry. Okay, I'm going to leave you with this. I got into this industry, into the credit repair industry, because I had bad credit. I worked through a bunch of different companies, like I told you. I've seen the good and bad of credit itself. I've seen the good and bad of credit repair companies. I've seen the good and bad of credit repair regulations. And I assure you that there's a major threat from the TSR to this industry. Perhaps Credzu is a solution. If it's not perfect right now, we invite everyone to help us help you. And although we probably might not agree on all of these things, I think if we work together, we can actually be unified as an industry, helping each other. And regardless of any disagreement, I think we can agree on that. Thank you.
Give it up for Robbie. I don't think anybody's going to disagree that a whole lot of work went into that presentation with a whole lot of education background, and that is something that we're committed to. Is not just ignoring things, which, trust me, I really want to stick my head in the sand and ignore that stuff. but we can't.
Nope.
And so,
Thank you.
thank you very much.